Welcome to this episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. Today we talk about the conservation of one of the most charismatic species of the Southeast Asian rainforests, orangutan. Joining us today is Michelle Desilets. She has over 20 years of experience working with NGOs involved in orangutan conservation. She was the chief executive of the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation UK. She is currently the executive director of the Orangutan Land Trust. We talk about the threats faced by these great apes, what is being done to conserve them, and how palm oil can be made more sustainable to prevent the loss of habitat in the tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you do, don't forget to share and subscribe.
Welcome, Michelle, to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on here to talk about orangutans.
Oh, I'm very pleased to join.
So, how many species of orangutans are there, and where exactly are each species found?
There are three species of orangutans. All orangutans live exclusively on the islands of Sumatra and Borneo. Borneo is split up between three countries. About 4/5 of it is Indonesia, and about 2/5 of it is Malaysia, and a little parcel of it is the Kingdom Brunei, where there are no orangutans. So they live in two countries, two islands, and there are three species. Now, the three species are Bornean orangutan, Sumatran orangutan, and there's a third species living in Sumatra that's only been recently in within the last decade identified as a distinct species. We knew they were there. It wasn't that it was an unknown population, but we didn't know that they were distinct from the Sumatran, evolutionary wise, genetically, etc. And that is the Tapanuli orangutan, and that is the world's most endangered great ape, because there are only 800 of them left, and their habitat is threatened by a proposed hydroelectric dam as well as mining.
Why are orangutans so important for the ecosystem?
Orangutans are important for so many reasons. They can be considered like a flagship species. So by highlighting their conservation needs, etc., we can, if we help to protect the orangutan, they draw the attention because they're megafauna. They're also an umbrella species. So all the other species that live in that ecosystem with them would be protected as well when we protect the orangutan. They're an indicator species. They indicate the health of a rainforest by their presence. And a keystone species, maybe most importantly, is that they're critical to the functions of the ecosystem. They are major seed dispersers in the forest. And some people refer to them as the gardeners of the forest, because as they move through the tree canopies, they break off dead branches and allow the sunlight to reach the ground for new seedlings of rainforest trees to mature. So they're kind of doing the pruning, if you will, to allow the regeneration of the natural regeneration of the forest.
What is driving such extreme deforestation in their range?
The biggest driver of deforestation in the range today and in recent decades has been the conversion of their habitat to oil palm. Previously, and still to some extent, the use of forests for hardwoods, for logging, timber, paper, and pulp has posed some threat, but following in their footsteps was a massive boom in oil palm. And now in some regions like the eastern part of Borneo, the new and greatest threat in that region is mining, which is devastating landscapes, their habitat, and really putting some pressure on them. And then related to that is the hunting and human wildlife conflicts. So as these orangutans are pushed into perhaps villages or farms or even larger plantations, they get into conflict with the humans, and usually they come out the worst for the wear in those conflicts. They are also directly hunted without being seen as a threat. They are pursued by hunters in some regions, and that's like a little known fact, like, or it's not really addressed in the conservation world so well as the other pressures, and the conservationists are looking to see how they can address the pressure that hunting presents to orangutans as well.
So you mentioned palm oil, which is obviously a big issue in Southeast Asia. So are there any suitable alternatives to palm oil?
Well, the best alternative, we say, to palm oil is sustainable palm oil, because other alternatives, soy, rapeseed, coconut oil, they are, by essence of their low yields, much less sustainable. They use a lot of land. So if we were to swap out of palm oil, that would put pressure in the areas where palm oil is produced to produce something else, and thereby create more deforestation rather than less deforestation. So it's switching oils is only kind of moving the problem elsewhere, or indeed intensifying it in the areas where palm oil is produced. So what we call for is sustainable or deforestation-free palm oil as the way forward. So that is the best alternative at present to palm oil. And especially because palm oil is so versatile, and has the qualities that manufacturers are looking for in products. Other oils tend to not deliver the same results that the manufacturers are looking for.
So you are a founder of the Bornean Orangutan Survival Foundation. So what is the idea behind this organization?
Okay, well, that was actually not the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation itself, which is a Indonesian-based organization that does incredible work. I created the UK Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation in order to help support the work that Indonesian foundation was doing in Kalimantan in Indonesia. So at that time, which was right around 2002 or 2000, I think 2002, I founded that. The pressure was that my best friend and I had created a rescue center that we designed for 100 up to 100 orangutans. And at that time, those orangutans were orangutans that were being kept as pets illegally or traded, like intended for international trade of orangutans, maybe to theme parks in places like Thailand and so forth to perform for the guests. And so the work of that was rescuing these orphans and trying to teach them to be proper orangutans and return to the wild, after about 10 years of rehabilitation. And so that's what we funded. But by around 2005, the oil palm had reached central Kalimantan in earnest, where this center was located. And all of a sudden, our center, designed for 100 orangutans, was bursting at the seams with over 800 orangutans. And these were adult wild orangutans that were displaced and in grave threat to their lives, because the oil palm managers put a bounty on the price of their heads for the workers to literally bring in a head and say, we've done away with this agricultural pest, because those orangutans would come into the new plantations desperate for food because the forest has been wiped out, and they would tear up the young saplings of the oil palm and eat the shoots of it and destroy the oil palm. So they were a financial threat, an agricultural pest to be eradicated. So the focus then changed. By 2009, I left Borneo Orangutan Survival UK to continue their funding for the orphans, etc. And I created Orangutan Land Trust to focus on the drivers of this displacement and death, the decline of so many orangutans, the oil palm problem itself, and how that was going to be resolved. So the focus of Orangutan Land Trust moved more towards the root causes and the long-term solutions for orangutans.
Could you just talk a bit more about the work you're doing in Orangutan Land Trust?
Yeah, so the Orangutan Land Trust, we don't have our own teams on the ground in Indonesia, but what we do is look at the grassroots organizations, the Indonesian-based organizations that are doing the best work on the ground and delivering the conservation outcomes that we like to see. This is usually on a landscape kind of scale. So it's reforestation of degraded orangutan habitat. It's rewetting of the peat swamps that have been drained and are causing, the degradation of the forest and prone to massive fires. It's working with communities to find solutions. And it's also surveying areas for orangutans, going out and rescuing them and translocating them, addressing the problem at that scale, firefighting, these kinds of things. So we deliver the funds that we raise to those organizations to enable them to do the work. They don't always get the visibility that we have through our social media and so forth here in the West. They're busy rescuing orangutans and doing the work, and so we're kind of a spokesperson for them to raise the funds. But perhaps more importantly, our work, because we're not so much fundraisers as much as drivers of behavioral change and advocacy, in that we work very hard on this palm oil issue, and we work with governments and the growers and the manufacturers and retailers, other NGOs, both social and environmental, to try to find the solutions that will, again, make this product more sustainable, make it not threaten the survival of the orangutan and other biodiversity and ecosystems where oil palm is grown. And I think the efforts there kind of multiply the impact 1,000-fold, because it's a global standard, and if you can get companies to refrain from clearing the habitat of species like the orangutan or the jaguar or forest elephant, you could save a lot of animals, short of running out with a dart gun and rescue team and cages and so forth. It's much more productive use of time and resources, I think.
As a consumer, how can we be more responsible towards consuming sustainable palm oil?
Well, it's a little difficult in that the brands that use sustainable palm oil are not required to say so on the products here in the UK. They're welcome to, if they have been certified as using sustainable palm oil, and there is a logo for the roundtable on sustainable palm oil, or RSPO, that you can look for. But again, not all of the products that use sustainable bear that logo. They're kind of hesitant to draw attention to the fact that there's palm oil in it, because there's misinformation, misconceptions about palm oil, that some people think all palm oil is bad and is to be avoided. They look for free from palm oil products, which to us is kind of like the worst form of greenwashing, because free from does not mean it's more sustainable in any way at all. But there are some excellent tools, and one of the best ones is an app called Palm Oil Scan. It comes out from the World Association of Zoo and Aquaria, and was developed in partnership with the Chester Zoo. And it allows you to scan barcodes of products and will give you a result of how that manufacturer is doing as regards to sourcing sustainable palm oil. And if they're, doing well, then go ahead and buy the product. If they're not, there's opportunities to send an email or, alert the manufacturer that you expect the products in that you consume to only use sustainable ingredients. And that's finally like the biggest thing that you can do. Is, you can choose to buy or not buy. Whether that communicates down the line to the teams that decide on the sustainability of their ingredients is not so clear. More importantly is to communicate to brands and manufacturers that you expect only sustainable ingredients, and social media is such an excellent way to do that, because then everyone else sees you saying we want sustainable ingredients, and it becomes a more popular thing to do. Excuse me.
So, in terms of palm oil, the Bornean Orangutan Survival Foundation is working with commercial entities such as palm oil and timber plantations on the best practices for orangutan conservation. Could you elaborate a bit on this?
Well, I mean, that's again, I'm not with Borneo Orangutan Survival, and at this point we do, from time to time support the work, and we keep in touch, and we know that they do work with the plantations on the ground, and the plantations are actually helping them to secure safe areas for orangutans, like river islands. They can, like, orangutans that aren't able to be released into the wild, maybe they have injuries or they're just not very clever, they can live out their day. The NGOs, almost all of the NGOs working out there with orangutans, have relationships with the palm oil industry to drive better practices and to support conservation. And for us, yes, sometimes what we do is kind of, make those introductions. Between and the NGOs that are working out there, but we work on several like task forces and working groups and advisory panels within the RSPO, within the Sustainable Palm Oil Choice, previously with Palm Oil Innovation Group, that we'd sit down with these people and decision makers, and we determine what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, how it needs to be measured and audited and demonstrated to be, transparent and truly sustainable, so that becomes a global phenomenon, that, we only have sustainable palm oil. That's what we really want to see. So we work on the complaints panel. So when a company is deemed not to be doing the right thing, we determine what to do with that company. And we also work on writing up what the standard says, what the principles and criteria says. So we don't only help to write the rules on how to protect orangutans as an oil palm grower, but also what your social requirements are for communities, for labor, no child labor, safe living conditions for your workers, decent living wage, all kinds of aspects of what makes a sustainable product. Right now we've been called to advise on the legislation that's emerging in New York, California, and some other areas of the United States that are looking to match the EU due diligence directive for sustainable ingredients, which means, or deforestation-free ingredients, which means that it will be legislated that companies can only source things like soy, rubber, timber, palm oil, etc., that is free from deforestation. So that's really the main work of Orangutan Land Trust, is driving those kind of system changes.
Across the last 20 years, with all the work you've done with orangutans, so what have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced in terms of orangutan conservation?
Wow, that's a good question. In the early days, the challenge was local communities, to get them to see the orangutan as a species worth saving, a species that is sentient and has emotions and deserves to live free and not in cages in people's back gardens. It was very hard to change mindsets, but we did. We did through film nights where we would show mother and infant orangutans in the forest, and how the mother cares so tenderly for the infant, and that started to resonate with human mothers and started to change mindset. So those were the early challenges. The later challenges, are of course around the changing the mindsets of the industry, obviously, that their first task is to increase their shareholders income, their duties to their shareholders, isn't it, and to profit, and to try to introduce the other two P's of sustainability. So you got profit, people, and planet. How do you introduce those two without it being at a cost to their profit? How do you make it financially viable? How do you make a business case for sustainability, for saving orangutans? And not being a business person, or an economist, you can have a lot of wishful thinking of what it should look like, but you need to be very pragmatic as how it really plays out in the end, and that only that when you do that will have a chance that your ideas are going to be adopted. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
So, what do you think is the long-term vision for Orangutan Land Trust and your other forms of conservation efforts?
Well, what we'd like to do is our dream would be to see fewer orangutans in cages, fewer orangutans in wildlife rescue centers, which demands a lot of funding. I mean, it's and if we can get them out of those centers and stop them being filled up with displaced and injured animals, by virtue of saving their habitat, stop the tap flying, then those funds that were going towards the care of those orangutans could be diverted back to forest restoration efforts, making corridors between forest fragments so that species like orangutan can move freely and breed freely. And that is our goal, to see a world where landscapes are able to sustain orangutans, where orangutans can thrive, and not be, not have their lives threatened through either starvation or human wildlife conflict. And to do that, we need to make the production of palm oil sustainable across the board, especially in the regions. Well, I mean, the fact is most palm oil is grown in regions that are highly biodiverse. So anywhere palm oil is being grown, there's a pressure to make it sustainable and deforestation free, because otherwise it's a grave threat to ecosystems.
And my final question for you is that what has been your greatest learning from your conservation career?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
My final question is, what has been your greatest learnings from your conservation career?
I think my greatest learnings is that you can't look at conservation of a species in isolation. You can't look at, you can't say, I save orangutans. You have to save orangutans, you need to save forests. And to save forests, you need a very holistic approach. You need to be looking at all of the things that are threatening that forest. And you need to make practical, pragmatic strategies to engage with the users of that land and the decision makers. And, again, going back to work with RSPO, it's the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil. If I only fought the corner of the orangutan, I would lose the battle. I need to make the whole process sustainable, because without looking at people, you can't save the planet. People are part of ecosystems. And so you can't think of conservation in silos, either by a species that's identified, or a region that you work in, or that we're just going to work on saving forests, but we're not going to worry about the needs of communities. It all has to be interconnected. I think that's my biggest learning over the past 30 years that I've been doing this.